Hello, beautiful people. I can't thank you enough for joining me tonight. I'm happy that you are here because I have one thing to prove to you, and that is I am going to prove to you that you are not lazy. It's a funny term, and we've gathered it, I think, from a lot of societal trends and norms that we think we need to follow, and it's sort of come as a result. But it's really not dealing, using that term is not dealing with how we naturally function. So what's happening is we're really not learning how to work with it, use it, work around it. So I'm going to tell you a bit of a story, and it was kind of the hard lesson that I came up with or came across to learn this lesson, because I have to be honest, lazy was a great fear of mine. Being lazy was a great fear of mine. And I think often we come from hardworking, committed families, and the fear of being perceived as lazy could be considered one of our greatest failures. But I think what's happening is we categorize it as a coverall, and we're missing a few vital pieces that we have to look at differently to do this. So stick with me. We're going to go through this, and I can promise you that if you're one of these people that says, oh, I'll never be caught as lazy or thought of as lazy, we're going to look at this in a totally different way. And if anything, I hope you learn from my mistakes. So really where it came to light for me was when I was starting to have extreme health issues. Now, I had been a health and fitness coach for many years and was big into all things natural, but nothing was working anymore. And so one of the most notable symptoms that I had was extreme fatigue. And I had always challenged myself, so experiencing extreme fatigue wasn't abnormal, but I always seemed to recover from it or knew how to deal with it. Unfortunately, that wasn't working, and yes, I was eventually, after many years, diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease and potentially told that I may not totally recover from this. Now, interestingly, there's kind of many phases to this, and that, I went into treatment and I understood that I should be committed to my treatment and would, see some improvement, but I had to take care of myself. And I think often we're okay with that concept. So if we're sick or we know that we've done something challenging, we can handle with being lazy for a period, but that we then have to get past that. Now, really interestingly is that we seem to be able to come up with the timeline for when we should be able to get past that. And it's always interesting to me that how would we possibly know when we shouldn't be tired anymore? And I remember one time even recovering from an Ironman triathlon, and I was Googling whether, I should feel better after 3 weeks or 6 weeks. And ironically, I was dealing with the illness then and not knowing. And around 2 months, I was disgusted. I'm like, you should be better by now. Well, I did something similar in training or in treatment where, it should only take a few months. I should more or less be back. And that wasn't happening either. I had definitely got a lot better, but I was hard on myself for the fatigue aspect, and literally was not okay living like that for the rest of my life. So then I tried many different things, and we've also done these things where we're just going to push through, right? I'll just force myself to push through, because I kind of had a period in the day where I would crash every day. So I thought, oh, I've gotten into a habit where my body's used to going down and crashing at the same time every day. So it's really just a habit I need to break. And so I would push through. Well, if you want to talk about a relapse, try something like that. And it made me realize that it isn't a mind over matter thing. And so many things we do for our physical health, we believe are mind over matter. And that wasn't the case. So eventually with time, I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to my body. And ironically, we don't even know how listening to our body, what it really looks like. Even when we think we are doing self-care and taking care of ourselves and listening to our body, we are so far from the level of what really listening to our body is, to the messages, to the extremity of the messages our body is trying to tell us, that we can't even imagine listening to our body to that extreme. And so I will say this effort took many years of tweaking and refining, to the point where I actually had to, and I've talked to many people that are dealing with chronic illnesses, I had to go through a long period of time where I really listened to my body. And this is really hard mentally to do, because it feels like the extreme level of laziness that you could ever even imagine. But what my body needed most was the recovery time. And it wasn't for me to decide what that recovery time should be, so I had to listen to it. And it took until I went to the drastic point of literally succumbing to the messages it was telling me all the time for a very long time, until it had the confidence that I was going to do the things it needed to take care of it. And then it would start to boost my energy in a way that typically what we do when we get a boost of energy is we just deplete it right to the end, because, oh, we feel good. We have so many things to get done. Let's go until we crash again. And so I was doing that at a very small level because I was dealing with illness. But, sorry, I'm just seeing a message come in. So I was having to really get to the point where my body had the ultimate confidence that I will listen to it. And it was at that point that I felt the tides turn, where it was like, okay, we're going to start to feel confident with the energy she has, and we're going to start to feel like she's going to use it wisely. And when we give the subtle signal that there needs to be rest or downtime or recuperation, she's going to listen to it. And that was when my body really started to prosper, because it didn't feel like it had to reserve that energy and hold me back from using it, because it knew that I wouldn't go to the extreme level of depleting it and then it would have to build back up again. Because if you imagine when you're with your energy reserves, if you're always depleting your energy down to the bare bones, it's like your body has nothing to work with to rebuild it. So when you're draining yourself and eliminating all you have, it has nothing to work with to build back up. So the idea is that you really want to understand where your body is at certain energy levels, when you're getting close to depletion, when it just needs a quick rebuild, or it just needs time to build some reserves. There's so many different factors, but you want to start to understand those signals so that you don't get into a point of depletion where your body crashes and you have to try to come back from nothing. So that's what we're going to talk about, and really at this point, you have to assume that your body's diagnosis of your energy levels are really the only ones you can trust. So who else would know your energy levels as well as your body? There's no measurement, there's no test, there's no outside guru that can come in and say, "Oh, your energy level is at here, you're good to go. Maybe you can, use a little bit more. Maybe you need rehabilitation." The point is, you can be the best one to test that, to understand it, to assess it, and to read the signals. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, first of all, you just have to believe that when your body feels tired, when you feel lazy, when you feel unmotivated, when you feel like you're procrastinating, is it possible that that's true? It's valid. It's actually not just a mental construct you have about the condition you're in. Could it be that your body is actually telling you and giving you this feeling to tell you that there's a problem that you have to pay attention to? Can you assume that when you feel this way, your body has something to tell you that you need to stop and listen to? Because if you can make those assumptions, you're going to start to build a relationship with yourself that your body can tell you what it needs when it needs it. And you're going to start to build not only a security in your relationship, it's going to have the confidence in you reading those signals, and it's going to be able to boost and build your energy far more effectively for you. And one of the very first ways you can do this, and we'll do it right now, is you actually start to learn the signals and feelings you're having in your body by doing a body scan. And so if you're sitting in a chair or you're lying down, whatever you're doing that's comfortable, just try and get your body that either your legs are lying flat or your feet are sitting still, so that nothing's really crossed, and it's comfortable and it's restful and it's sort of sitting still. And I want you to just simply do a scan of your body and see what you can come up with. So test your toes. Do you need to wiggle them to relax them? What does the top of your foot feel like compared to the bottom of your foot? Your ankles, do you need to wiggle them? Are they relaxed? Do they feel like they kind of have sort of a tired or swelling feeling? What about your calf muscles? Do they need to be stretched? Are your knees sore? Sometimes aching knees will benefit from some heat on them, you rubbing them. Same with your quads and your hamstrings. Does some stretching need is required? Would you benefit from some heat or a warm blanket? Think about your hips. Often our hips get so tight and tense from sitting. Do they need a stretch? Do you need to look up a nice hip expansion type of movement? Your stomach, how does it feel? Does it feel like you need no more movement? Does it feel full or blocked? Do you need some water? Could your stomach benefit from a circular massage? How about your chest? Maybe you need to just roll your shoulders back and open up your chest. Take some big breaths. Go down your arm. Is there muscles in there that are tight? Are your shoulders tight? Do your forearms need some massaging? Your wrists, your fingers. You can do a self-hand massage with cream. Then go to your throat. How does your throat feel? Would it benefit from a hot, soothing drink? Your sinuses, are they tight? Is your forehead tight? Could it benefit from a massage? Your head, how does it feel? Does it feel tight? Maybe you're dehydrated. You want to do this every day, as silly as it sounds, because it's going to help you build and understand the signals. But what it also helps you do is you simply then can ask this question when you notice something in your body. What do I need? What does my body need? Is there something small you can do to help that part in your body that's aching or that part that feels tight? And usually there is something very simple we can be doing to cause more comfort. Do you know that one of the big things you can do to bring energy and healing to an area is just to rub it? So not only are you heating up the area, but you're sending blood to that area, and that's really where you get the oxygen and the blood circulation that's going to cause it to create more healing. It's something very comforting that we do, but ironically, we don't even think to do that. So here's the thing. What do we do when our body feels lazy and tired? Most commonly, we more or less tell it to suck it up and keep moving on. And that literally is the opposite of what your body is trying to tell you to do when it gets to that point that it feels that way. So it's always nice if you can build up a toolbox of things that you can do to help your body, because we assume that it's just sleep. I need more sleep. But say you're having trouble sleeping. Say you normally don't sleep well. Obviously, you want to do some things to work on that so that you can maybe get into better patterns, do things more relaxing, look at what you're eating or doing in the evening that may be too stimulating. There's a lot of things you can do to try and work very slowly on your sleeping patterns, but those will happen over time. But they're also not the only tools in the toolbox. So we have to think about what other things we can be doing that will help us do that. Now, the big one is the misconception about foods and drinks that will help us. So you want to be looking at live foods. Obviously, live foods will build the energy in your body, and really, we tend to think about food in general as giving us energy, but we have to realize that whenever you eat, even when you're especially when you're eating foods that are don't have a lot of natural raw energy in them anymore, meaning they've been processed or cooked or whatever, you potentially have to use energy to process that food. So you can think of food as a long-term energy source, but when you want an immediate energy source, you want to look at eating smaller amounts and live foods, fresh fruits and vegetables that are, have the enzymes in them that not only help you break down the food so that they're going to use less energy for you to digest and process the food, but they also are a source of energy in themselves. But if you eat too much, then you're really draining your system of energy. So although you're thinking of, my body needs more energy, I need to put more into it so that it can use it for energy, that's for the long term. For the immediate, you want to look to the more natural raw foods. And the other thing we need to consider is these products that are on the market that give us quick energy. It's not that they may not work for you for the short term. The problem is you always have to compensate for that somewhere down the line. So whenever we drink or eat something that's kind of an energy source, if it's giving you a false source of energy and it's boosting your body to sort of build up that energy burst so you have it temporarily, that may be great in a pinch, but the problem is your body needs to then use resources down the road to compensate for that. So you want to think about that when you're going to these quick, unnatural solutions. I know that there's always times where we do have to resort to that, but you are going to have to compensate for that. So even if you got a boost of energy to do something, you may actually need more rest and sleep afterwards to compensate for it. And I shouldn't say you may, you will. So that's something to be considering. Even when we're going to caffeine, it's great for it to give us a boost, and especially when it's become a habit that our body's used to. It's not something that we want to drastically give up because that could be very draining to our system, but you need to know that when you're getting that source of energy from an outside source that is not completely natural, your body will have to do extra work somewhere to make up for that. So that's just something to think about. And then when it comes to actually considering why we are being lazy, especially procrastinating, because we're even less sympathetic to ourselves when we think of it as procrastinating. And here's what happens a lot. A lot of times when we procrastinate, it's often we can't really understand it because it's something that's important to ourselves. So you have to consider that it could be simply because it is that important to you. So if you're having trouble procrastinating and it's something that you're sure is really important to you, it could just be that you're worried about being too perfect. You want to do it when you kind of have clarity of mind. Maybe you want to do it when you're feeling more energy because you want to do it so well, or you just, you're overwhelmed by starting it because it's so important to you. You need to consider all these things and imagine that you want to be sympathetic to yourself. You want to coach yourself and guide yourself as if you are challenged with something that's really valuable to you, and you want to be able to do it well. But that's really when you want to look at doing little steps. Guide yourself. Don't look at the big picture. Don't look at the full scope of what you have to do. And we'll talk about a few little tools you can do with that. But here's probably my most important message about understanding when we perceive that we are lazy. And it's so misunderstood when it comes to humans, but if you look to animals in the natural world, you will understand that. And if you look to, especially endurance athletes, you will understand this. And this is what I want to say. Well, first of all, if you just look to the natural world, we know that there are energies out there that influence us, right? We know that the tide changes with the moon energies and that certain times of the month, astronomical energies can impact us. We know that energy has, or wind has so much energy that it actually can power up a house. And we know that the sun can be very draining of energy. So how is it not possible that what's happening in the natural world around us could be affecting our energy, and it really has even nothing to do with what's going on with us? And so how can we be hard on ourselves and just simply with the fact that there could be something bigger than us causing us to feel depleted or energized? And so we need to recognize that there isn't always a clear, straightforward reason for why we may feel lazy. And so maybe it has actually nothing to do with being our fault. So that's something you just have to keep in mind and keep in the back of your mind at all times, because that can be a factor. So it's important to know that and know that it could be beyond even your perception to know. But second, when it comes to the natural world, we need to understand that nature evolves and improves in cycles. And you may have heard me say this before, but it's so important to understand, because if we ever actually tell ourselves you're being lazy, then we can't be understanding this. So we need to recognize, and I love to use an endurance athlete as an example. And quite often when we're training with endurance athletes, and quite honestly, actually training anybody that's in fitness, I feel it is very important to work with our natural cycles, and that generally includes a week of downtime. And I don't mean doing nothing, but I just mean if you take it, and the cycle for different people is very different. So I use a month cycle as an example. It's probably the most common one that works for people. But really what you often have is 3 weeks of building and a week of recuperation. And if you talk to endurance athletes or anybody training heavily or professional athletes, they will tell you that this is a mandatory must. And for that reason alone, I really don't understand why we wouldn't even imagine that that's important in our everyday life. But we don't. We really, really don't. And we often actually think that we should almost do more every week than what we did the week before, let alone have a down week. And so if you start to examine this cycle in your life, you're going to see, and so say it purely has to do with going to work. If you imagine that you may have 3 exceptional, you may even have a consistent improvements over 3 weeks of productivity at your work. It doesn't necessarily mean the next week is going to be even more productivity. What it could mean is you need a lower paced week where your body is able to recuperate and adjust and even rehabilitate, even like restore all of the systems that you have going on in your body. And we often think of sleep and when we go to bed at night as that's when our body does that. But I can tell you, I think we can all agree we don't sleep that well. We have a lot of distractions. And truth be told, our body does not get the restoration and rehabilitation during our sleep as it would normally be meant to ages ago in previous times, with less distraction, with less influence, with less energy influence around us. Just our phones and electrical products that are influencing our sleep are making it less quality in itself. So you have to imagine that there's needs to be other ways that we restore our systems. Every organ needs to restore. Our whole body, every single part of our body has to restore over a period of time. And so if it doesn't get the ability to do that well during the night, then when does it? So that can also be accomplished by other means where you have this monthly or weekly cycle that works for you. You can do it within a week where you have a week or a day of the week that has a bit of restoration to it, but you won't have the same drastic overall restoration as you will having many days in a row, because sometimes it just takes a few days to even get into the zone where it knows that it can do this. And then it needs to be able to rebuild and then get you back kind of balanced into where you want to be going. So this is really important. No matter what aspect of your life you're thinking about, you need to have a down period. And even if you imagine that, say you're trying to work on something and improve it, and there's week 1, then week 2, then week 3, week 4 may need to be right down at the very bottom level. And it may take that to restore. And so if you imagine that you go months where you go 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of coming back down here to restore, where are you in a few months? Where are you in a few years? You haven't got down to this level, or you didn't come down enough for it to properly restore. So every time you keep doing this and missing that opportunity, come back and let your body rejuvenate, it's missing all these opportunities to get everything back and calibrated, and then it's just going to deplete. It's just going to come all the way down all on its own, and it's going to not be able to recuperate in 1 week. It's going to take all those weeks that you missed potentially to recuperate. So you want to take this seriously. So is it possible then, when you're feeling lazy, that your body was actually just telling you it needed a down week? Is that possible? Is it telling you that something's being challenged, that you have an injury that maybe you aren't that aware of, and it just needs some downtime to recuperate? Can you imagine how capable your body would be if you actually took that time, let it recuperate, and then bounce back? Because you know what people often find when they have that lower week to recuperate? The next week, they bounce so far back up, they start from up here. And then usually what we do is we have to break the idea that they can keep going higher and higher and not recuperate again. It needs to be a cycle. Nature's a cycle. So if you can find a way to allow yourself all these periods in these cycles, so maybe it's within a day, maybe it is even within a half day. So if you assume sleep is your night recuperation, then maybe you need a period of recuperation during the day. And this is where a lot of people will find benefit in what they refer to as meditating. And I hesitate to use that word because it has such a connotation with it that you feel you can't do it if you don't know how to meditate. But quite honestly, it could be the body scan that I was telling you about. It can be taking 2 minutes, closing your eyes, and taking a couple of deep breaths in, maybe 5 or 7 or 10, until you really kind of feel a shift in your body's energy and a relaxation, so that you know you actually allowed something to rejuvenate. That can be as effective as sleep, as many people will say. It could be just lying down somewhere horizontal just for a few seconds, so that every part of your body just feels no weight and pressure on it. There are so many things you can do to just figure out where in those cycles you can allow yourself some real rest and rejuvenation. And you can allow yourself that when you feel lazy, you treat it as a signal to rejuvenate and not a take on your personality or your physical ability. It's actually a signal to do one of these tools that you have in your toolbox. So if it's during your busy day and you don't really have any choice, I suggest you find something you do for 2 minutes when this feeling overcomes you. And maybe you won't feel instantly rejuvenated, but I can promise you that with time, you will find it more effective because your body will know what you're doing, get used to doing it, and be able to react to it and use the time more effectively when you do it. So there's your 2 12-hour cycles. Then you maybe have a week. So that concept of a quiet day during the week, and it may not be that you do nothing, but maybe you change how you do it. So even if it's a weekend day that you normally do house cleaning, maybe change the way and the approach you have for your house cleaning. So as silly as it sounds, can you find a way to enjoy it a little more, do it at a slower pace, make it something more that your body is not so uptight and stressed about getting it done? And I feel like a bit of a hypocrite when I'm sharing this tip, but it really is true. How you even approach some things you have to do during the day can have a huge factor on how your body rejuvenates and rehabilitates while you're doing it. So if you aren't going 100 million miles an hour while you're doing it, if you aren't all uptight and you aren't kind of challenging yourself to do it the fastest, hardest, the most, get more done, then your body can actually find ways to rejuvenate while you're doing things. So if you can find it to be more enjoyable, and I know that for many of the tasks we have during the day, that's a really tough one. And I'm going to touch on that at the end of this session because it's really a significant part of all of this. But if you can find ways to make them just more enjoyable at a level and intensity that is more applicable, your body actually can hang on to that energy and use it more wisely. So it's not always about getting things done faster and getting more done. The other thing is when you're feeling overwhelmed, I almost find that the word overwhelm is more appropriate than lazy, because really, the fact is that if you're even considering using the word lazy, then you probably set a lot of goals for yourself. You probably have a lot of things on your plate and you're probably feeling overwhelmed. So you really may want to just backtrack, look at the first step goal. If you want to listen to my session about doing the impossible, we talk about goal setting. It's really important that you just don't look at the big picture. Look at the smallest goal in front of you, but also sometimes think about just reaching for the lowest hanging fruit. In other words, do the smallest little thing that seems the easiest to allow your body to feel a sense of satisfaction, but not feel the overwhelm of pushing yourself. And quite often that will be best done by focusing on your strengths or the things you know you do well and easily. And often we tend to leave those to the last when we're not feeling motivated because we figure we'll be motivated to do them, but really you've struggled and depleted yourself all the way through before you even get to that point. And the truth of the matter is even things we do well are very hard for us when we're worn out, drained of energy, and lacking any kind of inspiration or empowerment to do these things. So we can literally deplete ourselves to even do the things that we do the best when we look at it this way. And the other thing that's the most depleting thing we can do is the emotions like shame and guilt. And we often think that we are motivated by shaming and guilting ourselves, but they actually are some of the most draining emotions we can have. And so although you may feel that they cause you to push through to get it done, the fact is they are going to drain you and deplete you of resources faster than anything. They are not effective uses of your energy. And here's the thing, it's funny enough, we always talk about motivation, but truthfully, motivation actually comes from these negative emotions. So typically we figure motivation helps us get things done because we tell ourselves that, we're overweight, we have to lose weight. So we think we get motivation to do that. Or we tell ourselves that, we haven't done enough, so we need to do more, so we will get more done. But you see, motivation doesn't work for the long haul because it is coming from a negative emotion. So just like shame and guilt, yes, they will help you kind of push through initially to get more done. But just like those false sources of energy, motivation gives you a bit of a push, but it's going to deplete you more in the long term. So if you can find ways to be inspired That is the purest source of energy that you will ever find. And it's really hard to know how to change something into a way that it will allow you to be inspired. So the easiest way I like to tell people is kind of what I was talking about with the cleaning. You want to find things you enjoy, ways to do things that you enjoy them more. And sometimes when you're really lacking true sources to get going, just do things you actually enjoy. So you have to think about the things you love to be able to figure out what that is. But that's where inspiration comes, because whenever you're doing something with more emotions like gratitude and appreciation and enjoyment and love, you actually create more reserves of energy than other emotions. So if you can find a way to do it and have fun doing it, if you can just go and do something you're having fun doing, or think of doing the things you love first so that you build up a reserve of energy so that you can do the things you were struggling with. I know that's very contradictory to some, how-to type pieces of information, but it really is a very natural boost of energy that we often overlook. That is where empowerment and inspiration come from. They come from the emotion we have while we're doing it and the emotions we have while doing other things. So try to figure out ways to inspire yourself. It's not selfish to do the things you love or to try and find ways to love what you're doing. But I can promise you, even what you think about, like, for example, doing dishes. We often think, I got to do these dishes. But if you imagine how good it feels to have these nice, clean dishes, or think about, the next meal you're going to make and eat on these nice, clean dishes, or, whatever it is that you can imagine, or you notice the colors in your dishes or remember why you bought them. Those are ways to be more inspired to do something versus saying to yourself, I have to do this. So it's something fun to try, but to notice how it's really hard to notice, the energy that it's building, but try to even notice the next time you do it, if there's any kind of change in your approach to it, because your body can actually associate that activity with the fact that you felt good doing it last time. And the more you do that, it will create a consistent association with it as something good to do and actually give you more energy to do it. So strangely, with all of this, it's basically a matter that it's unfortunate that we don't listen to the signals in our body as actually having value and trying to help us. And really, when we feel lack of motivation, laziness, tired, overwhelmed, fatigue, it quite often, or almost always, is a message that our body needs an opportunity to rejuvenate. It's actually your body physically telling you it needs an opportunity to repair and restore. So if we look at it that way, figure out what we can do to let it do it, and even let it do it more days or more times during the day, more days of the week, or more weeks of the month, then you'll find ways that your body actually feels more comfort, will have built up more energy, and will have more ability to keep boosting your energy as you're doing things throughout your day. If you actually want to know more on this, I do have a course on my website that's called Balance Your Energy to Energize Your Life. There's so many different aspects of who we are that we need to consider when we're trying to build more energy. But more importantly than all of them, you just want to know that it's always a message your body is trying to tell you. We can even feel fatigue from a message our mind is trying to tell us. And quite often, listening to it, taking care of ourselves is actually the best way to get back feeling motivated, inspired, and empowered to get all the things done that we want to do. And on that final note, don't forget, just because you get the boost of energy back doesn't mean you want to deplete it. Self-care is about checking in, reviewing, and making sure that you're consistently trying to learn what you need to help yourself. And the more you listen, the more you'll know, and the more you will be able to boost your energy. And if anything, I just encourage you, to throw that word lazy out of your vocabulary. It doesn't serve us. It's actually not accurate. And the truth is, you are not lazy.